I love houses. In my super extensive free time, I love just sitting on Redfin or Zillow, browsing houses in places that feel so dreamy that I probably can't afford. I hope I'm not alone here. Let me know if you also love doing that. But I have always loved houses and I've always been super interested and intrigued in real estate. And when I think about real estate and becoming a real estate investor, being into real estate, etc., sometimes I just kind of automatically think of some of the richest people in the world. And frankly, to me, it feels a little bit overwhelming to think about what it would take to actually be, more into real estate. I automatically assume that I just don't have the resources or knowledge to get into it. So, I just write it off. I definitely think that the barrier to entry on real estate is primarily knowledge. It just feels like there are so many things that I just don't know about real estate. What is the best way to get started? Do I need a license? How can I make sure that I'm doing something that's going to end up being profitable and not actually lose me money? Well, since I find this topic so interesting, I wanted to do the research for you and share 3 ways that you can actually get started with being into real estate today. So first off, I think is the obvious one, and that is invest in it. This is what I think a lot of people automatically think of and assume that they need to do if they want to get started with real estate. For example, this means buying a property, maybe an apartment complex, and starting to rent out the units. Now, of course, buying an apartment complex is very expensive and it's not a very easy way to, get started entry level into real estate. But there are actually a lot of other ways that you can get started in a more entry level way than going out and buying a multi-million-dollar complex as your first real estate investment. One idea is called house hacking, and this is actually when you buy a property and you live in part of the property while you rent out another piece. The goal of this concept is to use the income you're getting from your rental part of your unit to then cover your mortgage or your other expenses. So a really common example of this could be buying a duplex, living in one half of the duplex and renting out the other half. Another way that you could do this is through renting out a room in your existing house through Airbnb or VRBO. Or another cool thing that I learned about as I was doing this research is you can actually get started investing in real estate through real estate crowdfunding. So if buying a house yourself isn't quite in the cards for you yet, maybe it's a little bit too expensive, you don't quite have the funds for a down payment, you can actually get started investing in real estate through crowdfunding. There are some platforms like Fundraise that actually let you invest in real estate properties without needing tons and tons of capital. The way that it works is your money is actually pooled with other investors, and then you actually receive returns on your investments through rental property income as well as property appreciation. So I actually think this is pretty cool because it's an interesting and different, unique way to get started investing in real estate without having to, drop $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, buy a property, renovate it, and then start renting it out. So there are tons of different ways to actually get started with real estate investing, but the important thing to note is that there are different ways to do it, and it doesn't necessarily take, $100,000 or multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started. All right, let's talk about idea number 2. So this is a very kind of different perspective on how you could get into real estate without actually having to become a real estate investor. Maybe you want to familiarize yourself with the area, start seeing properties, seeing what houses are going for, maybe even leverage yourself as being kind of on the inside to get some off-market properties. The way that you could do this is by becoming a real estate agent in your area. So this is actually something that I personally considered when I was laid off over 2 years ago now. I was laid off in the beginning of 2023. I can't believe it's been 2 years, but this was something I actually really heavily considered because I loved the idea of touring houses. I always loved going to open houses. I loved the idea of having a really flexible schedule, especially as my husband and I were considering, starting a family. I also know that becoming a real estate agent has a huge potential of having a high financial upside. And I always just loved the idea of how much time freedom that being a real estate agent would have. And again, I think that this is even more so true now as I'm a mom. My time is so valuable. I love being able to stay home with her. So having flexibility in my schedule is super important to me. And a few fun statistics for you on becoming a real estate agent. Actually, 68% of real estate agents report having higher job satisfaction than their previous careers, which is amazing. And 89% cite that being their own boss is a top reason why they love being in real estate. Now, I know it can be intimidating considering what it takes to become a real estate agent. For example, do I need a license? How do I make sure I'm compliant in my area? So if you are considering real estate as a career, I actually highly recommend checking out Colibri Real Estate. And they're also the sponsor of today's video. Colibri Real Estate offers flexible online real estate courses for a variety of goals. Whether you're interested in becoming a real estate agent, continuing education, or are just interested in a certification, Colibri Real Estate is the resource that you need. One thing I love is how the platform is structured. They make it super easy to learn at your own pace, which is perfect for busy women and moms like me trying to balance their career with motherhood. Colibri Real Estate is a trusted name in the industry with state-approved courses, exam prep, and amazing support to make sure that you succeed. Whether you're studying after work, on weekends, or squeezing in those study sessions during nap time, their online format makes it so easy to get your license without feeling overwhelmed. Now, here's a little statistic for you. On average, it takes 2 to 3 months to get your real estate license. And I know personally from my own experience as a stay-at-home mom, I only have a couple of pockets of time here and there, 2 or 3 hours during the day during nap time and a couple hours in the evening to work on my own side hustles, my businesses, etc. So because of that, for me, it could actually take maybe more like 6 months to get a real estate license. But again, I think what makes Colibri Real Estate so special is that it has this flexible online courses so that students can go at their own pace and based on their own schedule. And again, another thing that I think is really cool is that you don't have to worry about the curriculum being, incorrect for your state or something like that. When you go to sign up, you'll actually click what state you're living in and testing for so that you can ensure that the material is going to be approved for your state. Plus, the curriculum is super comprehensive, so it just makes the entire process so simple. And a few other perks worth mentioning about Colibri Real Estate: they also offer dedicated student support. They have experienced instructors and industry insights to make sure that you succeed. And courses are taught by professionals with real world experience, which helps provide practical insights going beyond just textbook theory. So if I were to really be serious about doing real estate as my next side hustle, I would definitely leverage Colibri Real Estate for my choice in getting licensed. I really think it just helps take the guesswork out of making sure that you are compliant and making sure that you're taking the right courses, making sure that you're going to pass the exam. Again, I have limited time, so I don't want to be wasting my time studying material that's not going to help me pass. So if you also want to consider real estate as your next side hustle, make sure you check out Colibri Real Estate. I'll have a link to sign up down in my description box, and if you use code Jessica30, it will actually save you 30% on your online course. So make sure you guys check them out, and thank you again to Colibri Real Estate for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so far we've talked about going the traditional investor route for getting into real estate, buying properties, renting it out, flipping it, etc. Then we also talked about how you can become a real estate agent and the tools that I recommend leveraging if you want to pursue that. But next I want to talk about a third way that you can get into real estate, and that is through rental arbitrage. Have you ever heard of it? So this is actually a really cool and unique way that I think a lot of people can start leveraging getting into real estate. And what's cool about it is that it also has very low upfront cost. So in the simplest of terms, what real estate arbitrage is when you rent a property from a landlord, then you get permission to sublease the property. You actually go ahead and furnish it yourself, and then you list it on platforms like Airbnb or VRBO. And essentially you're trying to charge a nightly rate that's a little bit higher that would ultimately result in a profit for you over the cost of rent. So let's talk about some pros and cons of this, because there are definitely a few to consider. So first off, some pros. This is definitely a cool way to get started investing in real estate with low upfront cost. So you're not going to have to obviously come up with a big down payment. You're not going to have a mortgage. You're really just going to have, the monthly rent to cover, and then buying some furniture to furnish it. Another pro to this is it's not a long-term commitment like buying a house and having a mortgage. Instead, you're just signing maybe a 6-month, year-long lease, and you're really only liable for, those expenses during the lease period. If you end up not liking doing it, if you end up having a hard time filling the property, then you are done with it within a year. However, there are a few key downsides or cons to consider. So first off, of course, is making sure that you get landlord approval. You're going to want to make sure that you are in a lease that the landlord supports and approves of you subletting it. Of course, doing any sort of Airbnb and VRBO, there's going to be some market dependence, so making sure that there's good demand for short-term rentals in your area. Similarly to that, you'll want to make sure that you can even do Airbnb in your city. I know where I live, it's very difficult to actually do Airbnb and short-term rentals, so just something to consider. And of course, there are significantly lower upfront costs, not having to come up with a down payment or anything like that, but you are going to need to furnish it in order to list it on Airbnb. But I did want to quickly share a few real world examples of how this could look so you can understand a little bit better of a few different, strategies to execute this. So one idea could be kind of doing midterm rentals for travel nurses. Let's say you found a landlord that's willing to do a 6-month lease and it happens to be right by a hospital. You go ahead, rent that out, get it furnished, and instead of Airbnb, you can list it on some midterm rental websites like Furnish Finder. Let's say the monthly rent is $1,800, but because it's more of a midterm rental, you can actually rent it out for $2,800. And then after some expenses like utilities, etc., your profit might just be $800 a month. And again, this is really just passive income, so that is great. Another example could be finding a property such as a 1-bedroom in a popular area. Let's say like maybe you live in Austin, Texas. There's some good areas to go out in, get good food, music venues, etc. Let's say you can negotiate your lease with your landlord to pay $1,500 a month in rent and also make sure that you're getting those short-term rentals. You spend a couple $1,000s on decor and furnishings, but with Airbnb bookings, you're able to make actually $3,500 a month in rental income, less that $1,500 a month. Plus there's going to be some expenses like utilities and cleaning fees. So you could definitely come up with a profit of $1,000 to $1,500 in this scenario as well. So those are just a few examples of kind of how it could look. You could do short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, but again, the key is making sure that you find a property that would allow subletting, and then also making sure that you can do short-term rentals in your area. Okay, so you might be thinking this all sounds great, but where do I start? The best place to start is reflect and think about what strategy would actually work best for you. Is it investing? Do you have money to put down on a house? Do you want to own properties? Maybe you think about looking for a duplex, living in half and renting out the other to go ahead and, start building your rental property portfolio. Maybe becoming a real estate agent sounds really interesting and exciting to you. You want to have a new side hustle that has a high potential upside for income, and you also really want a flexible schedule. Or maybe think about ways that you can get started doing rental arbitrage. Ultimately, the most important thing is to do your research and figure out what's going to work best for you, your lifestyle, and what you can afford and have time to invest in. Make sure you learn about your local market and make sure that everything you decide to do is going to be compliant with your city. And finally, the most important part of starting a side hustle is taking action. You're not going to be successful in any sort of side hustle that you're doing if you just think about it, plan it, research it, and don't actually start taking action. And don't forget, if you are thinking about becoming a real estate agent, I highly recommend checking out Colibri Real Estate. Check out their online courses and make sure you use discount code Jessica30 to save on your online course. But guys, that is it. Those are the 3 ways that I would recommend getting started in real estate. If you, like me, find real estate really interesting and exciting, you've always wanted to be, a landlord or wanting to own multiple properties, or you just love doing open houses and seeing what's for sale in your area, there's tons of ways, obviously, to get started and leverage real estate to become your next side hustle. I think that real estate is a really awesome idea, especially for working moms or stay-at-home moms who have these passions but don't have a ton of extra free time to do something super time consuming. So I hope you found these ideas useful and interesting. If you've ever tried any of them, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience, and if you are going to give any of them a try, also let me know, because I'd love to hear if any of these ideas sparked anything new for you. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video, but I will catch up with you next time.